After Star Wars was released, it became apparent that my story, however many films it took to tell, was only one of thousands that could be told about the characters who inhabited its galaxy. But these were not the stories that I was destined to tell. Instead, they would spring from the imagination of other writers, inspired by the glimpse of a galaxy that Star Wars provided. Today, it is an amazing, if unexpected, legacy of Star Wars that so many gifted writers are contributing new stories to that saga. George Lucas, from the introduction of A Splinters of the Mind's Eye, 1996. Hello, and welcome to the Skywalker Files from a certain point of view. I'm your host, Rockwell, and today we're venturing into one of the most ambitious and ultimately tragic tales of the prequel era, Timothy Zahn's Outbound Flight. In this episode, we'll follow a galaxy teetering between hope and hubris. We'll meet a trio of smugglers whose poor sense of direction lands them in the unknown regions, Jedi Master Jorus C'baoth, whose confidence in his own brilliance is matched only by his inability to listen to reason, and a young officer of the Chiss expansionary fleet, one who will demonstrate that tactical genius can be just as powerful as raw force ability. We'll explore the collision of ambition, arrogance, and strategic brilliance from the quiet quarters of Coruscant to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Along the way, we'll witness heroism and sacrifice, manipulation and cunning, and the kind of decisions that make you wonder whether anyone in the galaxy really knows what they are doing. So buckle up, dear listener, and prepare to journey aboard the ill-fated Outbound Flight, a story of exploration, moral complexity, and the consequences of hubris that echo across the stars. Outbound Flight is set 5 years after the Battle of Naboo, a time when the Republic is outwardly calm, yet quietly strained by politics, bureaucracy, and the occasionally overconfident Jedi. This is the era before the Clone Wars, a period of preparation in which the galaxy still believes it has control. A notion that, as we'll see, is tragically misguided. The novel was written by Timothy Zahn, first published in 1999, and is widely regarded as one of the strongest stories of the prequel era. Zahn, already celebrated for crafting the Thrawn trilogy, uses Outbound Flight to explore not just the consequences of galactic ambition, but the subtle, more calculus behind power, strategy, and loyalty. In the timeline of Star Wars Legends, this story is significant for several reasons. It introduces the Chiss commander Mithra Naradu, known to most as Thrawn, and establishes the origins of one of the galaxy's most infamous tragedies, the loss of the Outbound Flight fleet. Also, it fills in the crucial backstory connecting the prequel era Jedi to the unknown regions, providing context for both the rise of Darth Sidious's influence and the tactical genius of Thrawn, who will later play a pivotal role in the post-Imperial galaxy. In short, Outbound Flight sits at the crossroads of Star Wars history. It bridges the prequel-era Republic, the ambitious but flawed Jedi, and the first glimpses of the far-reaching dangers lurking beyond known space. Zahn's narrative not only entertains with adventure and intrigue, but also quietly asks us to consider the consequences of unchecked ambition, a theme as old as the Jedi Order itself. At the heart of Outbound Flight are a collection of personalities whose ambitions, flaws, and courage drive the story. some notable, some reckless, and some simply baffling in their confidence. Jorus C'baoth is, unsurprisingly, the first to mention. A Jedi Master of extraordinary power, C'baoth embodies the dangers of overconfidence. He's brilliant, certainly, but brilliant without humility. A man who believes his vision of the galaxy is not only correct, but absolute. Zahn paints him as both formidable and frustrating. His skills in the Force is undeniable, yet it is paired with a hubris that blinds him to the consequences of his own actions. He dreams of outbound flight as a vessel of hope, yet the reality is a cautionary tale in pride and obsession. Standing beside him is Lorana Jinzler, the Padawan, and by the end of the novel, a Jedi Knight of remarkable courage. Lorana is the moral anchor in a story dominated by unchecked ambition. She grapples with duty, family, and the pull of the unknown, ultimately demonstrating that heroism is not measured in power, but in choice. Her journey is a personal one, as well as a cosmic, leaving her home, reconciling with her estranged brother, and facing decisions that will determine the fate of many. The story's most quietly brilliant figure is Mithra Naradu, whom the galaxy will come to know simply as Thrawn. Zahn introduces him here not yet as the Imperial Grand Admiral of legend, but as a young officer in the Chiss expansionary fleet. Calm, calculating, and extraordinarily perceptive. Thrawn contrasts sharply with C'baoth. Where the Jedi Master acts from conviction and emotion, Thrawn observes, analyzes, and responds with strategic clarity. It is in this contrast, hubris versus logic, that the novel finds much of its tension and moral complexity. The story follows the unlikely trio of smugglers aboard the Bargain Hunter, Captain Dubric Quino, Maris Ferezi, and a very young George Cardass. Their misadventures, including a wildly miscalculated jump into the unknown regions, sets much of the story in motion. Through their eyes, we glimpse the galaxy from a more human perspective, clever, resourceful, and yet entirely fallible. Quinto sells half-truths, Maris embellishes stories, and Cardass notices things others don't, especially in Thrawn. Their interactions with the Chiss commander highlight the subtle, cunning, and tactical foresight that will define him for decades. Finally, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, assigned by Mace Windu to observe C'baoth. Their role is brief, yet telling. The calm pragmatism of Obi-Wan, paired with Anakin's youthful impulsiveness, underscores the moral and generational lens through which the Order is viewed. They are observers of hubris, witness to ambition unchecked, and perhaps by the story's end, a warning of what is to come for their own generation. Together, these characters populate a galaxy at the brink of both discovery and disaster. Some from acts of ego, some from duty, and some from the curiosity of necessity. Zahn's brilliance lies in how their paths intertwine. Smugglers and Jedi, alien strategist and arrogant master, each perspective adding a layer of tension, moral inquiry, and ultimately tragedy. The story of Outbound Flight begins somewhat predictably, with chaos. Not the galactic level chaos, mind you, but at the very personal level of three smugglers running for their lives. Captain Dubric, Maris Ferezi, and a very young George Cardass are fleeing the wrath of Proga the Hutt. In a moment of desperation, Cardass punches in random hyperspace coordinates. The result? They vanish into the unknown regions, a part of the galaxy best described as unpleasant, uncharted, and slightly hostile. Their misadventures quickly escalate. They are captured not by the Hutt, whose larger and better armed ship is promptly destroyed, but by a flotilla of unknown origin. Aboard the Chiss flagship, the smugglers meet Mithra Naradu, Thrawn, whose calm, analytic demeanor masks a mind capable of anticipating moves most beings cannot imagine. Though careful, observant, Thrawn begins to assess not only the smugglers' capabilities, but also their character, quietly testing their wit, their courage, and their resourcefulness. It is here that Cardass recognizes in Thrawn a mind both brilliant and dangerous, and bound forms that will reverberate across decades of galactic history. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, the galaxy's political atmosphere continues in its usual state of mild absurdity. Jedi Master Jorus C'baoth insists, as ever, funding for his Outbound flight project. Negotiations with the Senate and Chancellor Palpatine are tense yet predictable. C'baoth's brilliance is matched only by his arrogance, and the galaxy politely accommodates his ego because no one wishes to argue with raw force power. Mace Windu, ever pragmatic, assigns Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker to monitor him, a task that ensures the Jedi are at least partially informed observers of the unfolding disaster. The plot unfolds along two converging arcs, the tactical and the tragic. In the unknown regions, Thrawn demonstrates the brilliance that will later define him, outmaneuvering the Trade Federation's battle fleet, managing the Viragari threat, and ultimately making devastating decisions that end up destroying Outbound flight. His actions, cold and calculated, stand in sharp contrast to C'baoth's increasingly erratic decisions aboard the vessel, where C'baoth acts from vision and ego, Thrawn acts from observation and logic. On Outbound flight itself, C'baoth seeks to transform the vessel into a microcosm of his idealized ideal Jedi Order. He dictates every aspect of life aboard the ship, including the separation of force-sensitive children from their families, and cultivates a culture of obedience to his singular vision. Lorana Jinzler, now a newly promoted Jedi Knight, observes the growing danger, ultimately demonstrating the courage and moral clarity lacking in her former master. Her journey from ambivalence to decisive action mirrors the novel's central theme, that true heroism lies in the moral choice, not raw power. Zahn weaves the story with a tone that balances tension, strategy, and tragedy. The suspense is deliberate, often quiet, unfolding through dialogue, tactical maneuvering, and personal decisions rather than spectacle alone. When disaster strikes, as it inevitably does, the consequences are immediate and absolute, emphasizing the fragility of even the most ambitious plans. Thematically, Outbound flight integrates the cost of hubris, C'baoth's overconfidence, the Republic's willingness to indulge his vision, and the subtle manipulation of Darth Sidious all demonstrate how unchecked ambition can ripple into catastrophe. Thrawn, conversely, embodies the careful consideration and discipline that tempers power with responsibility. Lorana's courage and selflessness provide a human counterpoint, showing that while institutions may fail, individuals can still act with honor and conscience. In the end, the novel is a mediation on the interplay between vision and arrogance, intellect and ego, power and morality. Zahn asks us quietly but insistently, when one believes one knows best, What is the cost to those who follow and to those left behind? Outbound Flight does more than recount a single tragic expedition. It echoes across the galaxy, linking the prequel era Jedi, the Republic, and the unseen threat of the unknown regions in ways both subtle and profound. First and foremost, the novel introduces us to Thrawn, whose tactical genius and moral pragmatism provide a foil to the arrogance of C'baoth. Here, Thrawn is still young, still learning, yet we see the foundations of the strategic brilliance that will later dominate the post-Imperial era in the Thrawn trilogy. His encounters with the smugglers, the Vagari, and the Trade Federation fleet reveal a mind capable of balancing diplomacy, deception, and decisive action, a combination that ensures his presence resonates far beyond this story. Zahn is careful to show us that Thrawn has skill not born of emotion or brute power, but of observation and cultural understanding, a lesson as relevant to the galaxy as it is to the story. The tragedy of Outbound Flight also illustrates the failings of the Jedi Order itself. C'baoth's hubris, unchecked by the Council's oversight and compounded by Lorana's initial hesitation to oppose him, foreshadows the broader failings that will come to a head in the Clone Wars. It's a microcosm of the Order, powerful, idealistic, and deeply flawed. The decisions made aboard that vessel, from separating children from their families to the pursuit of a personal vision at the expense of safety, echo the structural weakness of the Republic and its guardians, highlighting the cost of arrogance in a galaxy where even well intentioned actions can spiral into catastrophe. Moreover, Outbound Flight subtly introduces the notion of the far outsiders, a mysterious, immensely powerful alien presence that lurks beyond known space. Though unnamed in this novel, the implications are staggering. Darth Sidious fears the Outbound Flight projects stems not only from concerns for the Republic's stability, but also from the knowledge of an imminent galactic threat that the Jedi and their overconfidence might provoke prematurely. Zahn quietly seeds a larger narrative here, one that links the unknown regions, Thrawn, and the future Legends era threat in a coherent, looming universe. The novel also reinforces Sidious's manipulative brilliance. Through Kidman Dorana, he orchestrates a web of politics, subterfuge, and a strategic patience that positions the Sith as the unseen force guiding and ultimately undermining the Jedi. In doing so, Zahn demonstrates that the galaxy's fate is rarely decided in open confrontation. More often, it is shaped in shadows by those who understand the full reach of their power. Even in the seemingly minor characters, Quinto, Maris, and Cardass serve to anchor the story in a real galaxy. They provide a human perspective on events that might otherwise seem abstract or purely strategic. Their encounters with Thrawn, the Vagari, illustrate the interplay between ordinary beings and the grand mechanics of both the Jedi and Chiss alike. Zahn reminds us that in the galaxy this vast, every choice ripples outward, influence outcomes far larger than any one individual might imagine. Ultimately, Outbound Flight is not an isolated adventure. It's a hinge point. It establishes Thrawn's brilliance, C'baoth's tragic flaws, and the Republic's vulnerabilities. It foreshadows the rise of Sidious, the failings of the Jedi, and the potential threats of lurking in the unknown regions. And in doing so, it enriches the galaxy's tapestry, weaving a story that resonates in the legend's continuity for decades to come. Outbound Flight is without a hesitation one of my personal favorites among the prequel era novels, and for good reason. Timothy Zahn crafts a story that is as much about moral complexity and strategic brilliance as it is about adventure and spectacle. It's a novel that rewards patience, attention, and reflection, reminding us that not all threats in the galaxy come from blasters or lightsabers. Sometimes they come from ambition unchecked, ideals twisted by pride, or a failure to see the consequences of one's actions. At its core, the story contrasts hubris and humility. C'baoth, for all his power, demonstrates how arrogance can blind even the strongest Jedi. Thrawn, on the other hand, illustrates that intellect, observation, and foresight can be far more effective and far more morally complicated than raw power alone. Lorana Jinzler's courage and sacrifice stand out as the moral heart of the story, reminding us that heroism is measured not in strength, but in choice. What makes Outbound Flight truly compelling is how it bridges the familiar and the unknown. From the political maneuverings on Coruscant to the alien frontier of the unknown regions. From a Hutt chasing a freighter to a fleet shaped by strategy and foresight. Zahn masterfully connects the prequel era Republic to the broader Legends galaxy. And in so doing, he presents a story that is both epic in scale and deeply human in emotion. For anyone interested in the Jedi, the consequences of ambition, or for that first glimpse of Thrawn's brilliance, Outbound Flight is essential reading. It is tragic, thrilling, and thoughtful. A story that lingers long after the final page, much like a memory of a mission that should have never left the ground. And so, the Outbound Flight meets its tragic, inevitable end. A mission born of hope, ambition, and perhaps a touch too much self-confidence. C'baoth's arrogance, the Republic's indulgence, and the universe's usual insistence on consequences all converge in a story that is both heartbreaking and illuminating. Yet within the tragedy, we see courage and moral clarity, and a reminder that heroism is rarely simple, and virtue often comes at great cost. Outbound Flight is a story that warns us of dangers of pride, the weight of responsibility, the delicate balance between vision and wisdom. It is, in every sense, a reminder that the galaxy is vast, full of possibilities, and yet all too ready to punish overconfidence. Next time on the Skywalker Files, we'll embark on the trail of the Jedi. We'll follow the Republic's finest as they journey across the stars on a mission that tests not only their courage, but their judgment and their understanding of the Force itself. Secrets will be revealed, alliances tested, and as always, the consequences of choice, large and small, will ripple across the galaxy. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of ambition, hubris, and the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Until next time, may the Force be with you, and perhaps a touch of patience, as the galaxy seems to have a fondness for testing both.